Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Our guest today is Nicolas. So Nicolas, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Absolutely, man. So I run Olaya Consulting, which is an email and SMS marketing agency for DTC brands, mid-market brands between 1 and 50 million a year. I've been in the email space for over 5 years now. We started off as a growth partner, if you will, and then we pivoted to more email marketing around 3 years ago fully. I'm actually right now based in Colombia. I bounce between France and Colombia all the time, but I'm currently in South America at the moment. So yeah, it's going to give you a quick intro
Awesome.
of what we do exactly.
So I'm just curious more about your background. Like, how did you kind of get into the e-commerce space or into this business in general?
Yeah, well, it's kind of your usual stuff. I started doing dropshipping back in 2018, 2019. Of course, like Facebook ads was kind of the main traffic source. It was easier back then as well. So that's how I got introduced into like the entire digital marketing space. And then I started essentially offering those paid ad services in around like 2019, 2020 when the pandemic hit. And then I saw, of course, like Facebook ads back then was easier, but still it required more, I would say, more creative process, like more creative bandwidth from the brand and also ourselves as well, just to come up with creatives like that. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, etc. And so I saw an opportunity when it comes to email marketing because it was more of a system, right? More of a process to results as opposed to like Facebook ads where it's way more trial and error for the most part. So yeah, I started doing dropshipping. Then it went kind of okay. I would say I actually lost money doing that, but still I learned a ton. And then I started offering Facebook ads and then I transitioned to email marketing eventually as well.
Makes sense. So in terms of email marketing, obviously there's many agencies out there. So I guess like what do you guys kind of focus on? So like just certain verticals, or how do you kind of like differentiate yourselves out in the market?
Definitely. Yeah, the email marketing space is super crowded. Like for the past couple of years, I've seen a ton of people go into email marketing. I would say what makes us different from most agencies is that we actually utilize email as a platform, email and SMS as a platform, just beyond revenue generation and just incremental revenue. We actually use it as a source to collect extremely important information. For example, zero-party data, or collect up through post-purchase surveys or qualitative data that we collect, and then we can relate that information to other departments of the e-commerce store, whether it is the paid ads department, whether it is customer support, product development, CRO even as well. So we use email as a tool just again beyond just generating revenue, which is your typical stuff you see all the time, those Klaviyo screenshots where, hey, we are generating, 40-50% from Klaviyo without any context. That doesn't make any sense. And brands shouldn't really pay attention to those types of screenshots overall. You know what I mean? I'd say email to collect data is way more powerful. Also UGC as well, like reviews, etc. So that's how we essentially what makes us different for the most part.
So in terms of, if you can kind of expand on that, because I agree. I think there's a major misconception about email and attribution, what actually makes sense, what doesn't. So if you can just kind of expand for our audience about when people do show those screenshots, what do they actually mean? And like, what should a brand be looking for if they wanted to go and work with an agency?
Definitely. Well, just to give you an example, like with Klaviyo, the default attribution model is 5 days clicked or open an email. So let's say, for example, someone saw a Facebook ad, right? And they go to the website, they subscribe to email newsletter, and then 3 days later, they decide to purchase. And then they open your first welcome email that first day. And then 3 days later, they decide to purchase your product. Attribution is always going to be kind of a topic of discussion. That's not perfect. So who says it came from Facebook ads? Who says it came from email? Also, if, for example, your product is a replenishable product, like skincare or a supplement, obviously people are going to purchase again 3 days from now for the most part. So that gets attributed to your email revenue as well. And there's no really incremental value if that makes sense. Also, again, like with email, if we are talking about generating revenue, it's really tough to say it came from email. And just incremental revenue, that's another whole story. But just for when you see a Klaviyo screenshot and people just brag about generating 30, 40, 50, 60% from Klaviyo without any context or anything, it doesn't really tell you much. And it's really actually really easy to do as well. If you, for a specific month, decide to blast your entire email list with like 50% off offers all the time, I can guarantee you'll see 60, 70% from Klaviyo. Does that mean it's profitable? No. So that's why you need to take those screenshots and those types of like results with a grain of salt, and then ask the agency beyond just generating revenue and just beyond just sending emails, what's the strategy there? Beyond just generating revenue, what other things you guys do that actually bring in incremental value to your business, right? That's what I would just ask an agency if I was a brand, But again, it's really tough to gauge as well.
Right. So as you mentioned earlier that you kind of are traveling between Colombia and France. So what does that look like in terms of your clientele? Do you work with people mostly in those countries? Do you work with mostly people here in the States? Like, what does that breakdown kind of look like for you?
Yeah, most of the brands I work with are in the States for sure. I mean, I've worked with European brands. I would say it's kind of a different culture as well. European brands are, in most cases, a bit harder to manage because they like to micromanage. And that's kind of a culture thing, I've realized. With brands in the US, they're more open to trying things, right? And just letting us do our thing because we are the actual experts. So if I can, I prefer to work with brands in the US. And that's where I would say most of the brands I work with are located for the most, and Canada as well. Yeah. But just a few brands here and there in Europe.
So I guess in terms of, obviously within DTC, there's also many like verticals and niches. So where have you kind of found like the most success, or is it kind of like industry agnostic?
Yeah, it's definitely industry agnostic. I'd say where I have most fun is with brands where you're solving a specific pain point. Like with lifestyle brands, apparel, for example, it's cool and all because the aesthetics of brands cool. I'm creating amazing emails and beautiful emails. That's cool. But I feel like with, say, fitness supplements, you're actually solving a specific pain problem, a specific pain and problem. So it just becomes way more interesting to work with as well, because you can come up with some interesting angles, whether it is through the flows themselves or campaigns. It's just more interesting overall. So I would say, as you mentioned, it's industry agnostic, but if I can, I tend to work with brands.
Can you hear me?
My bad, it cut off, right?
Yeah, cut off.
I think it was me though.
Yeah. So if you can just repeat, because can you edit it? Just say, so you're talking, you're just pretty much saying the industry agnostic, and what you really like to do is focus with brands that are solving a specific problem, correct?
Yeah. So it's pretty much industry agnostic, but if I can, I prefer to work with brands that actually solve a specific pain, as opposed to a lifestyle brand like apparel, right? Because you can come up with more angles that are actually interesting. Copywriting becomes more interesting, and just overall, the entire strategy is more developed for the most part. With lifestyle brands, it's very quote unquote superficial, not really, but it's more lifestyle, right? So you get to show the products in different setups, etc. But at the end of the day, it's very limited. So yeah,
makes sense. And by that, are you referring to, so you're kind of mentioning more like supplements, so brands that, for example, have a high lifetime value potential, a high reorder potential, things like that.
Exactly. If I can, and this is something I push my clients to do all the time, if they can set up kind of a subscription model into their business, then 100% do it. Because again, like acquisition is harder than ever at the moment. So if you can squeeze as much as you can from the traffic that you're paying for through subscriptions, for example, the LTV coming from that customer is going to be huge, right? So I tend to prioritize brands with subscriptions as well. Definitely.
Makes sense. So how do you kind of look at, obviously email is often, people think of it as being like attributed to a Shopify website or like your own website, but obviously nowadays in 2025, technically you have many different channels, right? You have TikTok Shop, you have Amazon. So how do you kind of look at like overall growth as it pertains to things like email?
Meaning how to integrate email with those other channels?
Yeah, like if you're integrating with like other channels, or even if you're looking at overall MER, because sometimes it's very clear, right? You'll send an email, somebody clicks like on the link and they buy like the product. Sometimes a customer, like it happens oftentimes, where they might see an email and they go to Amazon and buy. It's kind of harder to like measure attributions. Like what do you kind of like look at overall if you have, which I'm sure you probably do have customers that are omni-channel?
That's a really good question. What we try to do all the time is try to be holistic when it comes to the email strategy. And then, for example, if you have TikTok Shop, if you have a loyalty program, affiliate programs, etc., try to integrate those different channels with email as much as we can. So we have a cohesive and just congruent strategy across the board. Sometimes it's kind of tough. And this is something I've seen with other brands is sometimes it's really tough to have alignment between departments. So whether it is the paid ads department or the acquisition department with us, marketing strategy. But if we can, we try as much as we can to make sure email part of it is also pushing those other channels, whether it is Amazon as well, even though it's harder to track. We try to push those channels as much as we can. TikTok shop as well. And as I mentioned before, like affiliate programs.
Yeah, makes sense. So in terms of, obviously nowadays here in 2025, there's a lot of changes happening with AI and things like that. So how do you kind of integrate that, if you do at all, when it comes to your emails, whether it's with design, copywriting, all of those things?
Oh, bro, I mean, I can tell you, we are using AI like crazy for pretty much everything except email design. It's not really up to par right now. I mean, it is sometimes use it for like lifestyle photos we can merge with the email itself. But other than that, it's not really very good. But we actually use it for everything. Actual strategy, copy as well, quite a lot. And then in strategy, you've got like ideation, you've got actual angles we can take for the different emails or the flow structure. And that actually saves us a lot of time. We have a bunch of GPTs we use all the time for different clients. And it's really helped us to accelerate pretty much the client delivery side of things tremendously. So we use it a lot. Yeah, we use it a lot. Of course, it does require kind of like some human input still, but it is really good for the most part. We use ChatGPT for the most part, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, AI is great. I think, I'm very bullish on AI for sure. There's so many tools. From the ad creative side, we use Poppy AI. I think it's a really good tool. I like that one a lot. But yeah, of course, ChatGPT, Claude, I think, Claude has better use cases for, certain things. Both are very useful. But yeah, it really just depends on like what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's funny because like around 6 to 8 months ago, we used to use Claude for copy a lot. It was way better than ChatGPT. Right now, I'd say it's the other way around, but Claude is coming back. So it's getting smarter, at least for copywriting. But yeah, I've heard good things about Poppy, especially for like content for personal brands as well. So I don't know if that's how you guys are using it, but I know it's pretty powerful.
Makes sense. Awesome. So right now we're obviously like halfway through 2025. So what do you guys really focus on here for the rest of this year?
Definitely Q4 for clients. Of course, it's a big season for e-commerce. All the learnings from Q1, Q2, we try to take those into account when it comes to Q4. If we can onboard some brands all the way to like Q4, good. But once Q4 starts, we just basically are very dialed in and just making sure everything goes as planned, because it's kind of make or break that specific season for a lot of e-commerce brands. So we focus 100% on that. So it's Q4. Yeah, strategizing Q4.
And in terms of onboarding or like, working with new brands, like what does that kind of look like for you? Has that been like through cold outreach, running ads, conferences? Like what has been the best way for you to kind of like go and grow this business?
Well, I would say it's changed a lot. Beginning was cold email, was a lot of cold email. It was way easier back then as well, like way, way easier. I used cold email for a long time. And then I, of course, started getting referrals from clients for brands we work with, and just basically they know some other brands and they wanted to essentially scale their email revenue. So they reached out to us. Right now, it's mainly my personal brand that I'm building on LinkedIn and then YouTube as well. So that's been for the past like year or so. It's been my main focus, because cold email, it's way harder. It just requires a lot of volume as well, and just a headache totally. So I transitioned to building my personal brand, which was long overdue, to be honest. And so that's how I'm getting most of my business. Of course, like some referrals as well as some agency partners that I work with. But how about you guys? Like, how did you guys like grow, and how you continue to get clients? What's your
podcast? Yeah, I mean, the podcast for sure is great. I've the same thing, like just putting out content, reaching out to people, going to conferences, events, as much as we can, so obviously in real life, I think is also the best, because you can meet people, have these kinds of conversations in person, but, obviously it's kind of a mix, online for sure can be good as well. But yeah, I guess just to wrap, if you could go back in time, right, to before you started this business, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
I would say 100% like focus on your craft, try to become the best at it, and then the revenue, the clients will come from there naturally. Become the best at what you do, whatever it is, and then naturally things will come to you if you're truly good at what you do. That's one thing I'll definitely tell myself, to be honest. And also like avoid doing what everybody else is doing, because if something is on the internet for everybody to see, is strategy, for instance, it's because it's most likely saturated to a certain degree as well. So I try to avoid it. Yeah.
So that's really good advice. So, Nicolas, like if somebody's watching this show and if they wanted to work with you, they wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or socials? I guess best way to find you and best way to get in contact.
Definitely. It'd be my LinkedIn primarily. So Nicolas Olaya, I'm in there. Also our website, Leia Consulting. So leia-consulting.com. And that's where we've got a bunch of case studies, email design samples, etc., etc.
Awesome. Well, Nicolas, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.